everybody, and welcome to the Mighty Matt Podcast. I'm Matt Sterling, your host, and I'm honored to have my guest and friend Arthur Martinot on the show today. Arthur is an ambassador for the Triumph Foundation here in Los Angeles and an active member of the local wheelchair rugby team. We recently traveled to Phoenix together to attend a rugby tournament and tour a fantastic athletic facility, Ability 360. And during that trip, he and his wife were even patient enough to join me on an extended trek to Pizzeria Bianco, a legendary restaurant in the area. I'm so happy to be in King Arthur's court. Welcome, Arthur. How are you, buddy?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing great, man. Thank you.
Anyway, I never really liked when somebody said, "What's wrong with you?" or, all these other negative things. So I turned that around and I like to say, when did you become mighty? So tell me about when you became mighty.
Sure. Yeah, of course. It is now March, so it would be about 3.5 years ago. July 19th, 2022, I was on vacation with my wife and some friends. It was a multi-part vacation that started in France, in the south of France, and then ended in, it was supposed to end on an island in the Mediterranean. That we didn't get to that phase, but we ended up in Costa Brava in Spain. So like in Catalonia, northern Mediterranean. We arrived the first day there, and then the very next day we spent all day at the beach, and I was just ecstatic. I'm a water baby. I just love being in the water, and I was diving off these rocks all day in this one spot that was perfect, super deep. And then at the end of the day, for some reason, I just decided a different spot, and I jumped in the water, a huge small dive, and I cleared all the rocks, and then I dove in, and then I think it's when I was coming back up and I ran into a rock. I kind of felt the crunch on my vertebrae, and I immediately knew something was wrong, and I surfaced, and I was like floating up in between kind of the rocks, and I could feel like the water was right underneath my lip, the water line. I was basically just barely treading water with my arms. So my arms weren't paralyzed, my shoulders were good, but I was like barely, and I could see somebody at the corner of my eye, this kid just staring at me, like trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Sure.
And I think when the blood started coming off, coming down the front of my face, because it was like I had a huge gash on the top of right at the crown of my head. Apparently somebody started yelling, "Ambulancia, ambulancia!" And then my buddy dove in and then dragged me out of the water. Yeah, that was the day, 3.5 years ago.
Wow. And how was the emergency care in Spain?
It was really good. I mean, I was laying on the beach for about, I guess 20 minutes. I don't know this. This is all kind of told.
Yeah, sure.
I was dazed, man. I was just looking at the sky, feeling like I was floating. I don't know where I was.
Sure.
I remember saying, "I'm so sorry, babe." I was talking to my wife. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid."
Yeah.
And she was, telling me like, "Don't worry about that." And so they took about 20 minutes. They took me to one hospital that couldn't handle me, and then they took me to another hospital called Val d'Hebron. And it took about, they did all their tests and all that stuff. And I think 24 to 36 hours later, I was in the operating room. And then I woke up, a couple of days later in the ICU. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a good experience, medically speaking, I guess. I could say that the hospital took really good care of me. It was top-notch surgery.
That's great.
And the hospital itself was pretty run down, I got to say. It was an old hospital. And the AC was broken. It was middle of summer. Everybody was coming in, man, it's hot. And I'm, at this point, I have, my nervous system is totally shot. And I'm naked all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It feels great to me. But,
it's fine.
But,
now, do you speak fluent Spanish, or who was advocating for you?
Yeah, no, I didn't speak fluent Spanish. I surfed a while, so I used to travel quite a bit. And then my first language is French. So there's a lot of similarities between French and Spanish, but it's still quite limited for me. I mean, I can get around and, order a beer and figure out where the bathroom is and in Spanish, but I can learn quickly. So yeah, there was definitely a big language barrier. Megan did all the talking for me to all the doctors. She handled everything behind the scenes, So
and Megan's your amazing wife.
Megan's my amazing wife. Yep, and she is fluent in Spanish. She studied Latin America. She was Latin American and Iberian studies in college and did a year in Madrid, and so she's really great with the language.
That's
but
great.
there's an added thing in that area we're in Catalonia, so they speak Catalan there. So there's Spanish and there's
Okay.
Catalan. So the nurses, would come in, some would speak Spanish, and this one would, some would speak Catalan, and just like, just kind of rattle off. I don't know. They were just
Sure.
talking really, really fast, and there was no way I could understand any of it. One was really nice. She had her iPhone with me in the morning, and she would say something in Catalonian and Catalan, and like just translate it. And we'd have a little bit of an
Yeah.
exchange. It was cool. And my day nurse was amazing. She was fully bilingual.
Nice.
She had studied in the UK when she was younger, and she was like my anchor. She just was, she was great. And then other than that, it was tough to communicate. The night crew was they're a pretty rowdy bunch. They'd show up and just. So everybody else in the ICU was non-conscious. I was the only
Oh,
one who
okay.
was conscious. So they would just blast music, and then like I don't know. In my
Nice.
head, they were probably just slamming beers and just having a good time. Uh, I felt like I was kind of a burden to them. So I don't know. It was a weird experience for sure. The ICU is not a great place.
Yeah,
Uh,
that seems a little scary. And so
yeah,
what was the next step after the ICU? Was there rehab in or
yeah, that's when it gets really good. First of all, the ICU and the hospital all part of one place. I was in 8 days in the ICU, so with the surgery, ICU, and then the month stay in the
Yep.
hospital. It was like didn't cost a lot of money. My
Okay.
insurance took care of it, everything, but we saw the bills. I think I had Megan write it down. It was dollars for
Wow.
all that. So
Yeah. Wow.
the insurance was like, "Yeah, okay, well, sure, we'll pay for that, no
Okay.
problem."
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I got after the ICU, there's the regular hospital stay. I shared a room with 4 other guys, and there was, maybe an hour of rehab every day.
Okay.
Pretty rough stuff. Go down into the, rehab room, it was like World War II, uh, era,
Yeah, yeah.
rehab
With
material.
old school
Just
style.
flings and strings, and I mean, it was pretty rough, but I was happy to have something. It was just to
Sure.
do thing. I could barely move by at that point, and the food was pretty terrible as the only thing. But other
And
than
were
that,
the
that
other
was good.
patients or the cord injuries?
Yes, the two that were in my room were. There was one other person I'm unsure of, but yeah, most people on my floor in this little wing that I was in was all spinal cord. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But after that, so I did a month there, and I got transferred to a place called the Goodman Institute, which is
Oh,
like a state-of-the-art European rehab facility specifically for spinal
nice.
cord injury. And that place, you'd have people from kind of all over Europe coming into that
Okay.
in there. So, and that I had my own room there. We had our own wing for all international patients.
Wow.
A giant gymnasium, full
Nice.
rehab, PT, OT. Very similar approach to what they do here in the States.
Okay.
Much more knowledgeable on the medical side. So my doctor was like they were just on point. Anytime there was
Yep.
anything wrong, like at the hint of that something might be going wrong. They were just on top of stuff. So if I had the beginning of a UTI, I'm like, I think
Yep.
I have a fever. They're just like on there. Yeah, you're going on biotics immediately. They're just really, really attentive, which is I don't think I didn't feel that when I transferred to the US.
Yeah.
Uh, and then again, super cheap, like very
Sure.
inexpensive. I think it was $65,000 for 3 months of full care,
Oh,
full
wow.
medical, all that stuff. And then on that site, they also have all the other doctors. They have urology, they have surgery if you want to get other stuff done. They
Yeah.
offered transposition surgery, which is where they take your tendons and your nerves from
Yep.
your bicep and then move it to the triceps so that you can actually have, hand function. I opted
Okay.
against it. I was like, I'll try
Yeah.
to recover on my own. Um, you know, it was an option.
A transition from getting out of the ICU and understanding the scope of your disability. What was your mindset and your first frustration of, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, Megan had asked me if I wanted to know the prognosis, and I said no.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready
Oh,
to accept it. I wasn't ready to know. I didn't want any information to kind of cloud my hope, and I needed the time to just sink into this thing. I think deep inside, I knew what was happening, and I just wasn't
yeah.
consciously ready to deal with it.
But it's great that you knew to give yourself that time.
Yeah, absolutely. It took time. It took, the first few weeks, I was like, I'm fine. They would have social workers come in and say, do you need to talk? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm totally good. Nothing had sunk in at that point, but over the few weeks and things started becoming more real, and the weight of the shock of the
Yeah.
accident started to become real as well. So there's the dealing with the shock of the accident, the reality of the situation, and then the dealing with all the loss, which comes later in waves. You realize what's happening when you go home. You go home and then
Yeah.
you're like, wow, okay, this is
Yeah.
super real now. It's very stark, and things weigh a lot heavier. But when you're in the hospital, everybody's taking care of you. You
Yeah.
don't have to deal with all the minutia, the ADLs, the activities of daily living, all that. It's all pretty. You're basically just kind of being, you know, pushed into all the daily stuff. It took a while.
When did you take that epic trip in Paris or in France before you came back to the States?
Yes.
And that was
Yes.
were those the friends that you were with, when you had the accident?
So we hatched this plan to go to France. We were eating cheese and drinking a lot of wine one night in our home in Los Angeles during lockdown, and then
Okay.
just like having a good time. And then we were just like, okay, in 2 years, let's do this. Let's go to Europe and let's take
Yeah.
a badass trip. And then, we planned for 2 months of traveling, starting with renting a house in the Mediterranean, just outside of Nice, with family, which is what we did. So we started with family, and then we transferred
Yep.
to. We moved to a little house in Provence, in a little town called Saint-Cyprès, and it's like this little old medieval village
Sure.
with some friends, and we had different waves of friends coming through.
Yep.
We had the house for 3 weeks and then friends would come in for a week, leave, and then go do their own things. This was the last wave of friends that we were going to be
Yeah.
with, and so they joined us for a few days in France at that little house, and then we traveled together to the south of Spain, or to the north of Spain, to the coast of Spain, Costa Brava.
And how was the accessibility on that trip?
So once I got injured and I got the clearance to go from Gutman to that green band, they're like, "You're good."
Yeah.
We discovered outside of Barcelona, this was really my only experience. It's fairly accessible. The taxis are not really reliable. We found out public transportation is good. There was a bus that just picked me up at the top. We were at the top of the hill, and then we can go down on the hill. We were in a place called Badalona, just north of Barcelona. So I would hop on the bus with Megan. Here in the States, the bus driver hops out. You make sure you're
To
going
help you, right?
to help you. Yeah, yeah. And they make sure that you're buckled in and you're good to go, and then they go back in their seat and they take off. Spain's not like that at all. They open the door, you wave, and then they like pop out that ramp, and then you hop in, and you better get to that little seated area quick because they're taking off fast. And those buses are electric, but they got a lot of torque. So I'm
Right,
like
right. They
struggle
can
to
jerk
get
you
in, and
around.
you just try to buckle yourself in, and then they just go, and I'm like, just oh my god,
Bouncing
it's
around.
yeah, and this is at the very beginning, so I didn't have a whole lot of, core at all. I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fall out of my chair, but you get used to it pretty quick. So that was
Sure.
good. It was a good way to get around. Buses were good. We tried to go to Parkwell. I would say that that's somewhat accessible. Megan was doing all the pushing, so I
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
see most of the park, but it's all hills and downhill. She had it quite the workout. And the rest of the
Nice.
city was pretty good. We went with some friends to some museums, and that was super accessible. Yeah, there's elevators. The sidewalks are good, and then the taxis. Again, we try to find a taxi. They do have. We were able to just like flag one down,
Yeah.
but to call them and then for them to come in with like a ramp van is kind of the roll of the dice, as it is here in the States.
Yeah, sure.
You try to get the Uber one that with the wheelchair accessible vehicle is pretty tough to try your luck.
Yeah, sure. So as this trip wound down, and that's when you came back to the States, and were you still living in Hollywood at the time, or had you made the move already?
We had not made the move. Well, technically, we still had the house, and the house was on El Sereno. I was still at that point thinking maybe I'll be able to walk enough to go up and down the stairs. And
Yeah.
this house was built into the hill, so it was
Yep.
about 30 steps to get to the front door. So at that point, Megan and some friends and family we decided to rent it out short term. So they put all of our
Okay.
personal stuff in a garage
Yep.
in the garage, and then we were renting it out, month to month. So we were still kind of living there. And when I got back to the States, Megan rented a place nearby, near the hospital,
Okay.
and in Pomona. So she got a little apartment nearby, near the hospital, and that's where we lived for the first few months. And then we found a house that we rented and moved into. And then we were just decided to stay in the area. The hospital was cleared
Sure.
with nearby. There was another rehab place, The Perfect Step, that was nearby. So I was like, well, let's just do that. And in this area, it's a lot easier to get around than Los Angeles. Los
Yeah.
Angeles sidewalks are pretty terrible. Um, there's a lot of hills and parking's not great. So out here there's a little bit more space, and we ended up digging it.
That's great. Now, what's the sort of chronology of Casa Colina and then when you ended up getting exposed to Triumph?
So I was in Casa Colina. I flew on a medical plane directly to Casa Colina. Well,
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. So we took an overnight. My credit card company paid for the medical flight. And so
Yep.
there's some American nurses came up, and I landed, and then we went straight into Casa Catalina. And I didn't know how long I was going to be there, so they originally gave me 4 weeks, and I was inpatient there for a little bit, and then they have meetings there every Wednesday for newly injured patients at Casa
Okay.
Catalina, like Triumph does. So they
Yep.
come out, and then for an hour, and they meet new people. And that was my first experience with Triumph. Dean McCabe was there, and he's got a very similar injury than
Oh,
I do.
really?
So we immediately kind of connected. He's like, yeah, he got
Nice.
injured, when he was 17. Same thing, diving off some cliffs and some rocks in San Diego. So same injury level too.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how did Health Hope Live play a role in your kind of recovery and where you are at that point?
Help Hope Live picked up when the other fundraising stopped. So we had
GoFundMe.
yes. Okay, so thank you.
Health Hope.
Help
Is
Hope
it
Live, yeah.
similar to GoFundMe?
They are so GoFundMe is not tax deductible. They're not. I don't
Oh,
believe
okay.
they're nonprofit, so they take a cut of to fund operations from
Yep.
you're donated. So Help Hope Live also does a much more, I think, reasonable cut, but all the donations are tax deductible. So
Got it.
once we got the GoFundMe, and then that took care of like all the medical stuff
Yep.
and all the rehab, and then we opened a Help Hope Live with, I think it was some of the hospital staff recommended it,
Oh, that's great.
and then so yeah, it that had a wider reach, I believe,
Okay.
and they have a pretty good platform where you can send all the updates through it. And people want to know what's going on. They want to donate, and they want to know
Yeah.
how are you doing, how are you using this money, how's this helping you. So we could do all that from Help Hope Live. And there's a lot of campaigns that are similar to mine on there. Help
Yep.
Hope Live specifically, people who are going through like really tough medical times or similar things.
That's great. Now, when did you first get exposed to adaptive sports?
After meeting the guys at Triumph at Casa, I think they had their first adaptive sports festival in the spring that spring. So I think that was
Okay.
the first time I went to an adaptive sports festival with Triumph, and then tried out wheelchair rugby. That was the first time I saw.
Nice.
There's tons of stuff going on over there. They had
Sure.
I tried the hand. They had a little off road. I don't know if you know those nature track type of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lay your chair on there. So we tried one of those. Yeah, it was that was the first exposure I had to adaptive sports. It was overwhelming, man. It was,
Yeah.
it was still super fresh, and both Megan and I were just like, "Holy crap, this is real." It's us now. But it was. I was gonna say that I barely played. I just found some video of that day, and like
Oh,
I'm just
really?
in the chair, yeah, just like barely able to push
Yeah.
that rugby chair, So made some strides there since.
That's great. Now, when did you try adaptive surfing and how did that feel to get in the water?
Yeah, I was really excited to do adaptive surfing. So I did it with that organization, that Jesse Billhour's organization.
Life rolls on.
Life rolls on. That's it. Yeah, and I was super excited to get back in the water. I was really,
Yeah.
really stoked about it. And I don't know if Megan and I were really prepared. And I say Megan and I because she's there with me doing everything at all
Sure.
times. I rely on her for a lot of things. Just getting the wetsuit on was a task in its own. So
Yeah.
that was, getting in the water, getting there was a lot of steps. Getting back in the water was not as magical as I remembered. Let's just say.
Right.
It's a different thing, man. You get, surfing I surfed for almost 30. Having an able body when you're surfing I mean, it's, you don't even think about it. You know, you go through the waves, it's just natural and nothing worries you. When you can't move as well anymore and you got, 15 people kind of carrying your board out, every wave that hits you, I was just kind of like, wow, I am totally in the hands of these strangers. If I fall off this thing, like that's not, so it was a bit scary. I'm just being honest. It
Sure.
was cool to, once they could turn me around and I got pushed onto a wave. Okay, I relaxed a little bit. And I was able to kind of really feel like I was surfing again a little bit. But it's scary. It's just not, you don't have control. You don't have control anymore. And there are a lot of variables that make it really challenging.
That was my experience as well. The ride is unbelievable. You're at one
Yeah,
with nature, but getting beyond the break, just you're waterlogged. You feel like you can drown at any moment.
that's
So,
exactly it.
but yeah, and I've been disabled my whole life, so it was, just a different experience. That's kind of why I was curious because having that ability when you're able-bodied, where it's just one fluid motion to get through the wave and keep going. It's a different experience, but I think it's amazing that you went back out there.
Yeah, I tried it twice. The second time was better.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm sure it gets better and better.
Sure. Now, tell me about rugby because I know that you're practicing weekly with the gang in Burbank. How does that feel to be out there with other people and doing your thing?
It's awesome. I think almost immediately I knew that I would be doing rugby. It took me a couple tries. I tried it and then I didn't go back for a little bit because I didn't have I didn't have wheels.
Sure.
And, I wanted to give Megan a little bit of a break. It's Sunday mornings, it's early.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
let me just get my thing going on and then I can just be independent and go to rugby on my own. And once that happened, I was just like, immediately hooked. I was going back every week. But yeah, it's amazing. Those chairs are so mobile.
Yeah.
You get into one of those rugby chairs, they're just like you're fitted in there really, really well. So snug. Just every little motion feels like it's so controlled. You forget that you're disabled. You wheel around with all these guys out there and like they're all in the same condition and more or less, and you start hitting people and it's like it's just exhilarating. It's a lot of fun and it's a great workout, and it's just all these things that are just made me feel so good and reminded me of sports and competition. So it was good. Yeah.
That's great. Just being out there with other people is just an incredible experience. I want to talk a little bit about your work as an ambassador for Triumph. How long have you been doing it, and what are some of the experiences you've had?
I think I joined probably about a year ago. Somebody had sent me an email and said, maybe you should try to join as ambassador. And I think in the back of my head, I'd always wanted to. I
Sure.
felt like this, this was something that I felt good about the organization, what was the mission and all that. So I got into it being close to Casa Colina. I was able to go to the weekly meetings to help newly injured patients. So Triumph does a
Nice.
bunch of different outreach, different meetings for different, for people who are newly injured and then for people who have been injured for a long time. And then they do, the sports and outreach and all that stuff. So this particular meeting that I go to every Wednesday morning is for newly injured patients.
Okay.
Same people who, like for me, that's where I was injured, who reached out to me, and that's how I got into it. And then it was at the beginning, it was a little daunting. I was just a little bit shy and a little bit, still very sensitive about my condition. And then talking about my experience with people who were freshly injured was a profound emotional experience. I had
Sure.
a few times where I started crying. So I was trying to
Yeah.
express to them, this is difficult. This is really what you're going through is incredibly hard. And it just kind of echoes, it reverberates in the
Yeah.
rooms. And then people get really emotional. You can see it and just kind of picks up. And it's a very real grounding experience and rewarding at the same time. And then the more I got comfortable talking to people and then figuring out exactly what was most helpful, how can I share my experience in a positive way to make people feel better or a little bit better about what to expect in the future. And,
Sure.
that's what we started focusing on a little bit
That's
more.
great. And your authenticity has to ring true to them. And I think it helps just to be with other people and show them that life goes on and that, you can start doing new things that you probably wouldn't have tried if you were plugging away at your life. Now you're in a position to do all these crazy things, whether it's adaptive sports or, even just the camaraderie that I saw at that New Year's event. You could just tell that everybody had a really nice, positive spirit. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really commend you for doing that.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and so I wanna have a little fun, and ask you, what in your experience as a disabled person, what is the most random or funny thing that someone's asked you in public about being disabled?
No, I thought about that question. I couldn't really think of anything too outrageous, but there was this kid, a friend of some of our friends from Florida. They were visiting, and he just asked me like plainly, like, he's like, "What does it feel like to be in a wheelchair?" And I was like, I just thought about it for a second. I'm like, well, and I just didn't really give him a great answer. I was like, well, it's kind of difficult, you know. It's like, okay,
Yeah, why
but
didn't you sit down for the rest of your life and figure it out?
I was like, yep.
No,
That, I mean, that's
but,
could be a long
I feel
answer.
like kids are kids, they're gonna be that way, but it's always
Totally.
fun to see
Yeah.
what they come up with.
Absolutely, I was just jazzed that he was curious. He was like, "What is your experience like?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I mean, that's a multifaceted answer there." But
Yeah, totally.
it got me thinking a lot about what is it like to be in a wheelchair? What is it like for anyone to
Right.
wonder? Not just kids, but like,
Yeah,
so yeah.
that's great.
I'll write about it. I'm writing about it. So
And that's right, you have to do that. So I always close these episodes by asking, if I were to clone you and there were two Arthurs in front of me, what question would I ask to reveal the true Arthur?
yeah, I would say what you know. This clone would have to know what is my favorite cheese of all time.
Nice. And what is your favorite cheese?
Well, while we were in Europe, I sampled this Comté Bleu, which is like a blue
Ooh,
cheese, but it's a no. So I'm sorry, it's a tum de Savoie, which is like these little mid-sized wheels of
yeah,
like
sure.
that's cheese, and I didn't know that they made a blue version, like a blue cheese version
Yep.
of it. Unbelievable, unbelievably stinky.
Yeah. I was gonna
Every
ask
time we
you,
open the fridge,
is it
man,
one
it
of
looks
those that
just like
clears the room?
wow. Yeah, yeah, intense, man, intense. So yeah, clone would have to have tried some of that.
That's great. That's great. Well, Arthur, I can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
First of all, I admire everything you've done with Triumph. I really appreciate your attitude toward life in general. And I just look forward to hanging out with you more.
Same,
You're a
man.
great guy, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
you being on
Yeah,
the
man.
podcast.
Same. I appreciate so much of your presence, and it's been such a pleasure getting to know you, man. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks,
I'll see
soon.
you soon. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I hope you'll click like and subscribe so you can meet the mighty.